So Ramadan is the 9th month of the Muslim calendar, and the Muslim calendar is a lunar calendar. And the difference between a lunar calendar and a Gregorian calendar, the lunar calendar is 11 days shorter than the Gregorian calendar. And this results in Ramadan shifting 11 days back each year. Muslims believe that Ramadan is the month in which the Quran was revealed to the Prophet, peace be upon him. There are two dimensions in focus of the fast. There's an outward dimension, and there's a physical and inward dimension. And the outward aspect of the fast is obviously abstaining from food and water, and you're doing this from dawn until sunset. It means abstaining from anger, controlling your ego, controlling your temper. Now, there's also an inward dimension to the fast. And so there's an element of developing compassion for those that are hungry and less fortunate than you. That's one of the reasons why I like to call it kind of like a spiritual boot camp. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he mentioned that fasting is like a shield. That a fasting person should avoid obscene language and vulgar speech. They should learn how to control their temper while they're fasting. And so it's an exercise in physical control, but it's an exercise in internal control too. And so the idea is that poor behavior can counteract the benefit of the fast itself, and it can lead to a decrease in the spiritual reward. I actually believe that's one of the most beautiful aspects of the month. There's this centeredness around both family and around community, but also around the act of improving yourself and also improving your relationship with God. So Muslims start fasting in Ramadan around the age of puberty. And so for many, there's a little bit of muscle memory around the act, but that's not the case for everybody, right? And there are people that are new to the faith, people that even with experience, it still can be quite challenging. And I started fasting at the age of 13. And as I got older, progressively, I fasted more days. As you get older, your responsibilities also increase. Balancing work and personal responsibilities can be quite difficult. You would assume it's just because that you're not eating and drinking all day, right? You assume it's just because of the hunger and thirst. But it's also because you're disturbing your daily routine. Your typical day starts much earlier than usual, and you're awake later into the evenings, partaking in congregations and prayer late into the evenings. And so when this is compounded over several days and weeks, it becomes increasingly difficult to manage the work schedule. This is especially true for parents and those who work longer hours or have physically demanding jobs. Community is a very important part of Ramadan, and frankly, it's one of my favorite parts of Ramadan. I have a lot of fond memories of waking up with my parents early in the morning and cooking breakfast with them and eating the pre-dawn meal and going to the mosque and spending time with my friends. As much as it is an individual act, right, of foregoing food and water during the day, it's also a communal act, right? And so you wake up together as a family, you visit a local mosque sometimes at 4 a.m., and you eat the pre-dawn meal to prepare you for the fast. And so the community aspect is just as equally important as the individual aspect of fasting. I'll admit that staying connected with the Muslim community at Experian has been very difficult, not only during COVID, but post-COVID. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done here, both in terms of building awareness about what Islam is, what Ramadan is, but also in terms of creating spaces and opportunities for members of the faith, but also members of other faiths to be able to come together. One of the things I'm really excited about is to actually work on building an interfaith network at Experian and building and bridging different faiths together and creating spaces and opportunities for them to connect and create an atmosphere that each can practice their faiths freely and openly. I think a lot of Muslims feel, especially living in the West, that they live on an island. You're engaging in this month-long act of worship and fasting. It almost feels like you're doing it alone. And so I think it's really critical and crucial, and I think a lot of Muslims would appreciate that if their managers sort of took the time to understand the impact that fasting has or that Ramadan has on their employees. And so for many employees, they're waking up earlier. They're waking up at 4 a.m., creating flexibility for your employees to be able to maybe end their day earlier and start their work day earlier. Or maybe allowing them to start their workday later, right, and staying in the office a little later. Creating flexibility for them to be able to adapt their religious identity with their work identity. And if possible, managers and colleagues should avoid scheduling meetings or work events around the iftar. And that's because Muslims around sunset are preparing to break their fast, and they're usually with their families and their friends, and they're preparing their meal. Your blood sugar's kind of running pretty low too by the end of the day, so it's generally just better to schedule meetings and events earlier in the day. And another thing that managers can do is sort of lean in, maybe reach out to their Muslim employees and ask how they're doing in terms of their workload and their work capacity, and see if they can maybe provide more flexibility in the day. Eid al-Fitr is a celebration that commemorates the end of Ramadan. And people gather at mosques in the early morning, they congregate for prayer, they visit their relatives, they eat delicious meals, they contribute to charity. And a lot of families, over time have developed their own traditions, very similar to families who've developed their own Christmas traditions or Hanukkah traditions. Because the holiday is observed on the lunar calendar, it moves 11 days each year, based on the sighting of the moon. And historically, it's been done by actually seeing the moon with the naked eye. Now it's done a little more scientifically. It's different from, say, Christmas or Passover or Easter, where it's sort of fixed in the calendar. And so because it's a moving or shifting holiday, it becomes a little bit more challenging for Muslims to take the day off. So I think for managers, providing that flexibility and understanding that the day for Eid is shifting and moving, that flexibility can go a long way in helping Muslims plan their calendars out. And it helps managers also account for it as well. And if you're looking to partake in the festivities with a fellow Muslim, it's as easy as just, saying Happy Eid. You can also say the Arabic version of Happy Eid, which is Eid Mubarak, which stands for have a blessed Eid. But, don't be afraid to sort of lean in and even partake in the festivities.